What is up, Omni Athletes? Today's episode of Omni Athlete is brought to you by Wild Zora Foods. So if you are an athlete who believes in training the entire athletic life cycle, training, performance, recovery, and transition, and you look at sport through that lens of body, mind, and spirit like we do, because you're here to elevate your state of consciousness and global consciousness through sport, then you know how you fuel your body affects every single cell in your body and every single ounce of energy in your being. So we're not just talking about the physical being, we're talking about the mental and emotional and spiritual bodies too. What you put into your body matters. That's why we partnered with Wild Zora. They produce the most incredible meat and vegetable snack bars that I have ever tasted in my life. All that is in these bars, it's absolutely incredible, is organic free-range meat and organic vegetables, right? Organic grass-fed, free-range meat and vegetables. That's it. There's no added sugar. There's no added preservatives. The sugar in it is from the vegetables and the dates that they actually put in the bars. They're made in our backyard here in Loveland, Colorado. The founders, Josh and Zora, absolutely rock. We love these guys. It's an incredibly authentic partnership because we actually use the products. Heidi and I love their bars. You can routinely see me walking around Fort Collins with a stack of Wild Zora bars in my backpack. In fact, I'm out right now. So as soon as I get done right here recording this, I'm probably going to go get some and make sure that they're back in my backpack. For the month of April, Wild Zora is offering the entire Omni Athlete community 30% off any product that they offer. At checkout, just put in the code TEAMOMNI30, 30% off everything. And any of you athletes out there who are not meat lovers, maybe you're feeling yourself completely vegetarian, or maybe you're just not a huge fan of meat as an in-between snack on the go for your fuel, they also have vegetarian options for you too. They've got meals to go and just an entire range of products that serve you and that serve the entire athletic life cycle, whether you're a meatitarian, vegetarian, or something in between. So go check them out, wildzora.com. At checkout, put in the code TEAMOMNI30 and you can get 30% off anything, everything. Check it out. We love these guys. We want to see you support them because they're supporting us and support the mission of Omni Athlete, which is to bring higher consciousness into sport. Now, let's dive into today's episode of Omni Athlete. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Omni Athlete. You believe that you can be more, and so do we. We created this show and company to do it with you by empowering your performance with the wisdom and techniques of the world's highest achieving body, mind, and spirit competitors. Okay, so today's guest is a former professional hockey player who went from being the youngest player ever drafted by the LA Kings as the second overall pick in the 1981 NHL draft to nearly losing his life after a devastating head-first collision with the boards that shattered the 5th and 6th cervical vertebrae in his neck 607 games into his professional hockey career. In an instant, he became a quadriplegic and was left with nothing but his thoughts and an awareness of his life he had never experienced before. Since that point, he has dedicated his life to forging a better path forward for himself, his family, and his community by uncovering and healing the hidden impact of trauma on performance. As a sought-after speaker, author, and entrepreneur, he has been featured in the likes of Sports Illustrated, Canadian Business and PBS, and his most recent book has been called A Must-Read by Jack Canfield. It's my pleasure to introduce to Omni Athlete the author of Thriving in Transition and The Trauma Code, Doug Smith. Welcome to the show, Doug.
Thanks for having me, Josh. Wonderful to be here.
There are a lot of places to start with the idea of trauma, but one of the most energizing and important pieces of the work that you do, it seems like, is this idea of the different kinds of trauma there are and why some can be more subtle and long-term devastating, for lack of a better word, than others.
Yeah, my work, you have to be aware of what the problem is. And that's what I found in my life. And yeah, a person has to understand what trauma is, how it moves around, so they can deal with it, because injury is to the body as trauma is to the psyche. And so they're two different things. And so when you look at trauma, you have to understand there's 4 types of trauma. There are only 4 types that we suffer from, but we all suffer from them. They're common in all of us. They're systemic. And the first one is catastrophic physical trauma. And catastrophic physical trauma, you can see, it's obvious. And then you have catastrophic emotional trauma, which you can't hide that. When you have catastrophic emotional trauma, Josh, people will know it. People around you will know it. So you have to do something about it. And then you have a thing called cumulative physical trauma, which we know that the damage is being done by hitting your head over and over again, but we don't see the symptoms till maybe it's too late. But we know. And then the fourth type of trauma is the one that is our ticking time bomb. And we can't see that one. It's the one that affects us in our daily lives at work and with our families. And that's called cumulative emotional trauma. And that's the slow conditioning of an individual to believe that trauma is normal, that the feeling that they have in their stomach when they go to work on Monday morning is the feeling they should have. And looking forward to the weekend is normal. It's not normal. And so cumulative emotional trauma is really the focal part of my literary work.
So this idea of that kind of sense of foreboding in our stomach, right? When we think about getting ready for work on a Monday, or just that sense of stickiness that comes with going somewhere related to work, to something that should be our passion. I think for a lot of us, we don't associate those kind of feelings with something that a professional athlete goes through, right? For most fans, they can't imagine how that kind of feeling could creep in when you're getting paid all this money, when you're living the what would, seem to the outside world to be this dream for so many other
That's the
people.
illusion, yes.
Yeah. So what do we do with that? And where did that show up for you in your career?
It showed up early. When I got to Los Angeles as an 18-year-old, I played hockey because I loved hockey. And after 2 years in Los Angeles, I started playing hockey, not because I liked it anymore, but because I was good at it. And those two things don't go very well together when you want to reach the top of anything. And so the reason that happened was because it was the first year of the 18-year-old draft, and there was no mechanisms in place. I went to training camp that year in Victoria, BC, without a contract. They didn't even have me sign to a contract. I was the second pick overall. Can you imagine? And so my people sent me there without a contract, and it was a huge risk for me. And then when they finally decided to keep me, they brought me to LA and they put me in the Airport Park Hotel, which was in Inglewood, California, beside the Forum, in a very dangerous part of town. And they left me there for 2 months. So I went and bought a Porsche. And why wouldn't I, right? Every 18-year-old go buy a Porsche. And then the head of security saw that he was concerned about me. So he gave me a loaded 38 to put in my glove compartment to protect myself in case anything bad happened. And this was a continuous process over about a 2-year period of time. And all of a sudden, I knew I had to get out. I was so sick. The culture was destroying me slowly, and they wouldn't trade me. So I spent another 2 years in a toxic environment, and it ended up in a place where the coach had actually arranged for me to fight a guy at practice just to teach me a lesson. One of the toughest guys in the league. He had arranged that it would happen. And that was probably the most emotional time of my career. I remember it being the most, it's emotional when I talk about it now, because when you have to sit across the dressing room from a guy who is getting ready to fight you and putting Vaseline on his face and taping his hands, and then the next night you have to go out and you have to defend that individual, very, very traumatizing. And so that was a regular occurrence until I finally got traded. So that was my experience with it. It all came to me when I broke my neck.
There are these moments, right, where when you talk about a toxic culture, what other moments can you reflect on that really, even if it was subtle, started to chip away at that sense of self for you?
Well, one night I was sitting on the bench in Los Angeles beside a guy named Paul Mulvey. And Paul had just been called up from the minors, and he was a good player, but he was seen as a tough guy. And the coach hadn't played him for about 10 games, just sat him on the bench. And then there was a bench clearing brawl against the Edmonton Oilers. And the coach was screaming at him on the bench. I was sitting beside him to get him to go out on the ice, and he didn't go out on the ice. And that coach just destroyed his career within 2 months, completely obliterated this guy's hockey career. And I was brought down as a 19-year-old to do a deposition against my coach about a player that was on the bench and told to go out and hurt somebody else, and said no. So that just being put in that particular situation itself was beyond comprehension for a 19-year-old who just wanted to go out on the ice and have fun, right? And do good for his teammates. The point is, with cumulative emotional trauma, it isn't continuous. So we can have these flashes of trauma that put us in that state. and then we'll have flashes of them in the future. But with cumulative emotional trauma, it becomes part of our being. It becomes part of our neuroscientific makeup. It's insane. So we start to adapt to those types of things, and it becomes a physiological issue.
So as you fast forward from your time with the Kings, and we're going down this journey a little bit, but what I find so energizing, Doug, about your story, and what I hope we can really share and dive into, is these different moments you had where the motivation and the drive and what was fueling your performance shifted, right? So you went from this toxic culture to the Sabres, where somebody believed in you and showed you that kind of trust and belief and love that you had been really searching for at the Kings. What was that experience like?
The first time I felt that somebody cared in the NHL was when the LA Kings hired Pat Quinn. Pat Quinn was the first guy in 5 years, he got there in my 5th year, that ever sat down and asked me what I wanted to achieve or why I was there. Never happened. And so he sat me down and he asked me what I wanted to achieve. He said, I want out of here. I've been asking to get out of here for 2 months or for 2 years. And he made a commitment to me that if I worked hard, he would trade me at the trade deadline. And he did. He traded me to Buffalo, to a guy who had wanted to trade for me for 4.5 years. And he was the winningest coach of all time, Scotty Bowman. When I arrived in Buffalo, he picked me up at the airport. On the way to my hotel, he told me that he thought I could be one of the best players in the NHL. And I hadn't heard that since I was playing for Brian Kilray for the Ottawa 67s here in Ottawa. I hadn't heard anybody say that. And the next night, my first game, he put Mike Foligno on my right side and Paul Cyr on my left. And I scored 13 seconds into my first game. And the team had lost 5 games in a row. So Scotty Bowman had just fired the head coach and gone back behind the bench and made the trade for me. I scored 13 seconds into my first game. I had a goal and 2 assists. We won the game, broke the 5-game losing streak. And over the next 5 games, my line became the top line in the National Hockey League. So I went from Los Angeles, where I couldn't function, where I was a healthy scratch. At the end of my time in Los Angeles, I was mentally destroyed. And within 2 weeks, I went from a healthy scratch on one team to the top line in the National Hockey League within 3 weeks. And it had nothing to do with my physical ability. And this is what I try to get across to students today. This is a brain first issue. This is a neuro first issue. You have to change the order from pathology to neuro first. And if you do that, the track you put yourself on is like a high-speed train. It's unbelievable.
What was that feeling like when Scotty Bowman picks you up and it's a simple act, right? It doesn't, yet I can imagine for you in that moment, it felt really deep. And there was a level of connection that was created instantly with that, however big or small act it was, that helped build that trust. What was that moment like? And as you kind of look through your career, Doug, and now the work that you do with leaders and teams now, what keeps us from those small but powerful acts of building trust and instilling that faith in other people?
The impact of something like that after you've been cumulatively traumatized is like an explosion inside your body. It's just like an explosion. It's like a flash of light. That's what it's like when you're so down and somebody comes along and it's like everybody knows what that feeling's like. It's like having your mom or dad in the stands when you're playing in a hockey game. Nobody compete with. I wouldn't want to compete with anybody when their mom and dad's in the stands. Even if you hear their mom and dad's in the stands, there's a palpable sort of bubble around that player, right? So that's the way it was for me.
So what are some of the signs, and if we put this lens on a coach looking at an athlete and members of their team, what are some of the signs that you've seen, experienced, or picked up on that show that an athlete or an individual may be the cumulative weight of that emotional trauma is starting to really stack up and impede their ability to flourish, to be themselves, to perform?
It's observation. You can't speak to trauma and you can't speak to culture. You can only observe them. So who's the best people at observing them? People who are trained to observe them and see the movements that they make and the decisions that they make and just Simply make small adjustments. Success is just simple disciplines repeated over time. Failures is small errors in judgment repeated over time. We're going to make mistakes, but that's the model I've always used. That's what I try to share with the students that come to me, the athletes that come to me. It's really the physical part's really, really simple. Like I could teach somebody how to spin a frisbee on their finger, or a basketball, or do anything that spins. I can make it levitate, and anybody can learn how to do this. This isn't something that just I was given, but I seem to be the only one in my circles of people who knows how to do it. It's bizarre. Anybody can do it. It helps your brain to do it, but they don't do it. But they like watching it, and they wish they could. And I don't. Anyways, that's just funny. My observation of the world.
And it makes sense, right? That something like culture, something like trauma isn't as simple as saying, well, if you check these boxes, that means this, right? So what are some of the feelings that you've experienced when you walk into a culture that you can tell just isn't, whether we want to label it as toxic or just not functioning at the highest level? Are there certain sensations that you pick up on in your body?
Well, it's not something that I feel. You just have to check the thermometer on belief in self, motivation, focus, and trust, asking for help, purpose, emotional control. You just have to check the pulse on those things. And what we use a very simple, it's 37 questions. It's bottom up, because you can't do a top down model, and 360s don't work because there's influence in the room, right? And so you do a bottom up question and answer, 37 questions, and then you're able to show the leaders what the people are reporting on them, and it's all anonymous, right? So, but here's the challenge: if you present the CEO with this information, a lot of them don't want to see it. Actually, I've had CEOs in my presence go to the boardroom door, slam the boardroom door, stand against the boardroom door and bang their head against the door saying, I pay my people well. I pay my people well. They should do what they're supposed to do. And those consulting arrangements never work out for me. It was the end of the relationship. That individual is going to continue to traumatize people. He thinks that money has something to do with their level of happiness. Once it goes past basic needs, it actually has a deficit. Like, more money doesn't mean more happiness, and that means, like, it doesn't mean better results. Yet we still equate this because we've been conditioned to believe that's true. It's called, in men 45 and over, generally speaking, there are some women, that's called the legacy of success. They believe that they were successful in a certain way, and that they're going to transplant that way into the next generation's brain, and they're going to be successful. But the next generation realizes they don't know what they're talking about. So there's a trust breakdown there. Logical?
So there's the two threads that are going through my mind right now is, one, I want to dive into the 8 different behaviors that are part of your system and really explore those. But the other piece of this is the difference between grit and trauma. And I don't know how we can tease those apart or what comes up for you, Doug, but I would love to hear what separates those two, because there is this notion of
you're putting me
representing.
On the spot, are you?
What's that?
You're putting me on the spot, are you? No, go for it.
Grit represents, in its purest and I think in the most energizing sense, the ability to just have that determination to keep going when we really care, when we really are moving towards something that motivates us on a deeper level. But sometimes it gets turned into this sense of traumatize yourself to get what you want. And there has to be a line somewhere.
So grit, I don't know exactly what grit means, but belief in self can be throttled. Can you get your belief in self so high that you're not afraid of anything anymore? That you could go, 25 miles an hour into a guy that's 6'5", 230, and I weigh 180 pounds, and I was doing that. That's called removing fear, because you believe in yourself so much. So if you relate grit to belief in self, all of a sudden you get a term now that you can build a model around. Right? So all these things are throttled. So here's how it works. The brain doesn't know the difference between recovery and performance. It's on one continuum. There is no such thing as traumatic brain injury because you can't talk about trauma and injury in the same sentence. It's linguistically incorrect. Okay, so there's only one injury to the brain. It's called a brain injury. The brain doesn't know the difference between getting better and becoming the best sniper in the world. It makes no difference. The brain only wants to do one thing. It wants to get better. And so what we try to do is we try to apply a physical model to the brain, and it doesn't work, right? It doesn't scale. And so once you start using a scalable model to look at how this whole process works, you can then apply systems like I've developed to the model. So there's learning that has to happen on the neuroscience part, and then you'll begin to see the integration of a system that's ubiquitous and does nothing but enhance human performance. And that's what my work does. It can't hurt what you're doing. It only touches every aspect of who you are neurologically, and it gives you a neurological bump. How about that?
Doug, this has been absolutely incredible. Where can these guys go to connect with you online?
Oh, just DougSmithPerformance.com, and then on Facebook, Doug Smith Performance. And then that leads to everything. You can talk to me there. And but I encourage people, if they want to know the problem, if they really want to dissect the problem that we face, the trauma that we face, then I really recommend they pick up the Trauma Code and peel through it. They're welcome to communicate with me. My mission is single-minded now. I just want to share a better path with people. I don't want to share the path. I want to share a better path. That's my mission in life.
It's beautiful and needed.
Thank you.
Doug, this show is called Omni Athlete because we want to understand what it takes to be the ultimate body, mind, and spirit competitor. So the final question of the show is, what does it mean to you to be an Omni Athlete?
It means that I'm helping people to find a better path, right? Whether they're an athlete or they're not an athlete. I think we all as human beings have responsibilities. Athletes is probably more accelerated because people look at them first. And so if we can figure out how to help them when they look at us, right? It's probably a lot easier for an athlete to do. So consider it.
Doug, thank you for being on the show. Wow. Guys, go dive deep into Doug's world. Check out his books. Just watch the content that he's putting out right now. There is such a powerful, not just story here, but transformation that we can all grab onto with Doug's system and with the way that he allows us to bring awareness to these, not just subtleties, but very overt traumas that at many times we turn away from in sport. We don't acknowledge for the impact that they have on our performance and on our just humanity as human beings. And so dive into his world, do as much work as you can to connect with him and understand the work he's doing. And until next time, thank you for watching this episode of Omni Athlete.
I got to leave your audience with one thing. It's about
Please.
Beliefs. There's only 3 beliefs. And if you want the article that was published in the UK, I'll send it to you. It's about belief in self, I. Belief in others, we. And belief in the organization, us. Those are the 3 levels. And I look forward to working with you and your audience. If anybody's interested, just like I say, reach out. But most of all, watch that video on my website. It was a lifetime goal to be out on the Ottawa River on April 4th last year. The ice was only 4 inches thick, and I'm out in the middle of the river making a video at 5:30 in the morning with a drone following me. It was the most incredible experience. Thank you very much, Josh. I really appreciate your interest in this.
Thanks for being on the show, Doug. That was incredible. Hey, what is up, guys? Thank you for watching another episode of Omni Athlete. Please go like and subscribe to our podcast. That is our goal right now, is just to build this community as big as we possibly can, and we need your help to do it. So like and subscribe, share our content, guys. If this content adds any value to your world, if it helps you perform, connect, go deeper, go wider, whatever it is that it does for you, if it provides value, all we ask is that you share our content and help grow this community. We can't accomplish our goal of elevating global consciousness through sport without you. You are an integral part of this mission and this purpose, and we need your help. So please go like, subscribe, and share our content, and continue to help us build and grow this community that is truly motivated to not just elevate consciousness, but elevate and shift the very culture of sport so that we can truly experience the athletic experience in a brand new and energizing way for so many people, guys. So thank you, and please like and subscribe. Until next time.